Why do I believe in open cultures? Well, and first of all, why is this worth asking? Well, I think it's worth asking because you should always understand where your beliefs come from. Where did you get the data that you base your beliefs on? Are the people who gave you that data biased? It's always worth examining where your beliefs come from. So where does my belief in open companies come from? Well, I can see three main angles, three main reasons why I believe in what I call open companies. The first one is inner, it's inside of me. It's that I really believe that we should treat each other in this way. We should be respecting each other, we should be treating each other as adults, allowing each other to have responsibility. I fundamentally believe that transparency is a better way of operating than secrecy. I really think that it's valid in and of itself, that goal of transparency and secrecy, transparency and openness and responsibility and so on. So beyond the practical reasons, I have internal reasons to believe in open cultures, obviously. But then there are some practical reasons. I'm not an entirely impractical person. There are external reasons. So one of them is evidence from other businesses. Frequently when I talk about open cultures, I get two kinds of reactions. Some that see where I'm coming from and see that it works. Some that say, oh well, I don't think that's going to work, it's just your little experiment, it works when you have 5 people, but then it's not going to work later, and then when we had 10 people, or it only works when you have 10 people, but when you get to 20 it's going to be impossible. Now we have 20 people and it's still working very well. And people will say, well, you know, once you get to 100 people it's not going to be possible anymore. But there is actually a fair amount of external evidence that this works with much larger scales than this. Here's a few. In the book Reinventing Organizations by Frederic Laloux, you have a dozen companies, all of which are much larger than Grantree, some of which add up to about 40,000 people, where they manage to they make open organization principles, transparency, self-management, all these kind of features. They make those work, and they make those work at very large scales, as I said, up to 40,000 people. In the startup world, there's a number of companies. Zappos, Medium. Zappos has many employees by now, and they're running Holacracy, which is an open company system. There's many examples of open allocation, which is a kind of another type of another feature of open companies, because it requires transparency, it requires self-management. Valve is well known with their employee handbook that they have open allocation, and they're $2 billion company, I think, or $4 billion, I can't remember, but definitely very sizable. GitHub, one of the darlings, one of the major successes of the tech scene in recent years, hundreds of people, $100 million raised recently. They run on open allocation as well. So there are plenty of examples in the tech, and now of course there's a granddaddy of them all, Semco, which back in 2004 was a $160 million company. God knows what it is now. But this all adds up to a pretty significant pattern of lots of different businesses around the world in all sorts of different fields as well. Especially if you read Reinventing Organizations, which seem capable of taking these open organization principles and making them work at scale. So when I'm told, oh no, this can never work at scale, I can't accept that feedback at face value, because it doesn't match up with the evidence that I've seen. And then of course there's another bit of evidence, which is Grantree itself. I can see what open values like transparency, like responsibility, I can see what those things do to people who are working with me. And faced with the evidence, it's impossible not to support the open principles for Grantree for our specific context. I can see that the move to transparency, or in fact it wasn't even a move, because we had transparency from fairly early on. I can see that the focus on transparency has had a massive positive transformative effect on the Grand Cheese culture. It's helped drive out unfairness. It's helped keep things moving, progressing, evolving all the time, never too static. And that's enabled people to be happier. I can see for myself the effects that this has had on people. So with these three angles, you can see where my belief in open cultures comes from. Is some of it is clearly driven by my values, but some of it is driven also by external and directly observable evidence. I have an internal belief, I have external evidence, and I have directly observable evidence. And that's why I believe in open cultures, because I see lots of evidence that it works, and it's something that I also want to believe in. And that's it for today. Thank you.